You heard what Bobby has said. How do you think your programs vary or differ or are the same as far as your athletic programs, your football program?
Well, dealing with the kids is going to be real similar. You know, we're going to have our set of challenges as far as motivation, and the kids have so many things to do nowadays. You know, trying to get them out and get them committed and all that kind of stuff. Varying probably geographically. You know, Vernon's probably a lot more spread out, where Chipley's a little more confined. We probably don't see as many of the travel issues, but I tell you, working with kids is working with kids. And I mean, you know, and I know they've got a great place, and we've got a great place. And I've been here since last April, probably. And I told somebody the other day, this is, and I grew up here, so I knew a little bit about it. But this is by far, they even a close second, best kids I've ever coached, as far as back talking and things like that. And one example, and people don't want to talk about it, but we have next to, I mean, very, very little stealing at Chipley High School. And then, you know, I've been at Luverne and Ashford at Northview. You know, I'm like Coach John. I've coached around a little bit too, and people just steal you blind. Kids are just steal you blind. And people don't want to hear that, but they'll just steal you blind. Very, very, I'm talking about very little trace at Chipley. And that was one of the first things that jumped out at me was, wow, this place really hadn't changed. I mean, it's just, because, you know, growing up here, you know, you think, oh, well, that was 20, 25 years ago. Then it's probably changed, but it hadn't, you know. But we've got our same challenges, and then there's going to be some things that are a little bit different, but real similar in size, real similar in the type of athletes we got, and you know, so.
Thank you.
How, being a part, well, it's not new anymore, but the rural district, I see some, I think it's positive for football. I've seen some negative from other aspects, like, you know, more soccer and more, I mean, how do you feel about it? How's it been working?
I like it. I mean, I got 18 years in Alabama. This is I haven't even made 12 months in Florida. So I'm still learning. You know, I coached for 18 up there, and private schools and public schools in Alabama all play together. Now the way a kid would move from one school to the other was an act of Congress in Alabama. If a kid lived over here and he wanted to go to school at another school, they had to move the furniture out of the house. They had to turn the lights off. They had to show a water bill at the new place, and those kids weren't eligible to the High School Athletic Association if they didn't. So you didn't have the recruiting. I know that's a taboo word, but it is what it is. You didn't have the recruiting, you know, going on in Alabama that you do in Florida. And I think these smaller private schools, you know, when you get in a big community like Tallahassee or Orlando or Gainesville or Miami, and you got a school that's got 500 or 600 kids in it, but they're in a huge urban area, then they can really handpick a nice team, and that's what you were seeing. You know, I know when Coach Holly was at Graceville, they went to state championship and just got the brakes beat off of them, but they ran into a private school down there they just couldn't compete with. And that's what you were getting to, was these small town schools were working hard and working as hard as anybody, but then they were behind the 8 ball when they got deep in the playoffs. You know, so I'm a fan of it. I think it levels the playing field. You know, I don't know a whole lot about the soccer issue, but I think as far as just in general athletic programs, it levels the playing field, you know, across the board. So.
Well, I can speak to it from two different aspects. One, in 2003, we organized a group of small rural schools in this area back when I was in Bluntstown to try to do this very thing. We met in Bristol with a group of folks from the FHSAA, and my principal, Keith Summers, who eventually made it to the board of directors. He was chairman of the board of directors for FHSAA. He kind of headed it up, and we tried to get this done back then, but they passed some rules and stuff and convinced us that they were going to do something different. Came up back then with the Rural School Championships. And in 2004, we had to beat a private school, Jacksonville Trinity Christian, who had won 3 in a row, to make it to the state championship. And prior to the official rural school division starting about 2 years ago, we were the last time 2 public schools played for a football state championship was in 2004, us and Fort Meade. And in 2005, we had a better team and ended up having to play Ocala Trinity Catholic and got beat pretty soundly. You know, that's the best football team I've ever had, and that's on any level. So I look at it from that perspective, and then when you start talking about other sports such as, and we don't always have all these, but you start talking about tennis and golf and some of those, the country club type sports, then public schools have no chance in any of those areas. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that, you know, it gives people like us some hope that we can do the work we need to do, have a good program, and have a chance. Because when you have one time in a 15 to 20 year span where two public schools play for a state championship, you've got a problem. You know, and Georgia has actually just now adopted something similar where they have separated public and private because it got to be so bad up there for other sports. Football was really not the one that backed all that. It was other sports that backed it with all the private schools around the Atlanta area, those type of things. So, you know, and I think the biggest problem we've got right now, and Coach mentioned the word recruiting, which is kind of, you know, the word nobody likes to use, but there's just very little loyalty with player athletes in schools anymore. That to me is the problem. It's not a recruiting issue. It's not me calling a kid that goes to Chipley and say, hey, don't you want to come down to Vernon? It is parents and kids that don't like the way things are going, so I'm going to go down here and play for him because for some reason they think he's going to be different. You know, and that's an across the board issue. That's not a private school issue. There's as much recruiting that takes place out here in this little area of the Panhandle, if you want to call it, because it's really not recruiting. It is selective placement of my kid where I think he's got a chance to be the best, or of the kid wanting to do something. Now, you may have the occasional situation where there's a bad situation and we don't need to be here anymore. But that's not the typical thing. It's just when I went to high school, I went to Baker County High School, I wasn't going nowhere else. It didn't matter if we were 1-9 or 9-1, I wasn't leaving to go anywhere else. And we just don't have as much of that amongst kids and parents nowadays as what there used to be. And so I think we have used that to get the private schools out of the way, but it's not just a private school issue. So.
Do you agree with that second part, Chip? I mean,
Totally. I mean, he hit the nail on the head. And it's a sad thing. The loyalty is and I felt the same way. I played here, and if somebody would have told me I was going to go play at Bonfield Vernon or something, I'd rather just chop my leg off or something. You know? But it's just and I don't know how you fix that. You know, I think it's a problem when a kid can start school at Chipley High School, and if he wants to play basketball at Graceville, as long as he transfers before the first day of basketball practice, he's eligible. If basketball starts on October 15th, he can transfer on October 14th and go play basketball, and then when basketball ends, he can come back to Chipley and graduate. You know, and he gets to play and do all that. I think, now what's the solution or what's the reasoning behind it, I don't know. Like I said, I hadn't been here as long, but it has caused a different mindset on loyalty. There's no doubt.
I mean, could the school board set regulations on that?
I can clarify on that. Everything that we operate under is state law. And the state law says school choice. Florida High School Athletic Association says as long as you're someplace before that season starts, you can play there. Now, the issue of them transferring back to graduate, this will be the first or second year that that's there. But that is a legislative issue that we have to operate.
Yeah, it's just, so it's the world we live in now, and maybe there's some upsides to it. We'll see 15 years from now. We might be sitting over 15 years from now saying, that's the best thing that ever happened because we learned through time. But right now, I'm kind of old school, and I like kids that start kindergarten at a place and they go to school, and I like them when they're in 3rd and 4th grade. Can't wait to go watch the football team run out of the sign. They want to go play at that school. They want to wear those colors, And I think those are the best places, which is really why I was drawn back to here, because this place is like that. So.
I think some of that came too when what kind of led it was if you want to take your child to this school because of the educational program they offer there, that they can't be discriminated against, in that manner. Well, then I think the sports side of that took hold of it too and said, well, you can't discriminate them against them for wanting to play here as well.
Kind
So
of
that's,
forms a loophole.
yeah, that's where that really, where we
And I can
start.
tell you, the biggest difference, and I'm not sure how Alabama is, but I mean, I can tell you, from being in Georgia for 2 years, the legislature has nothing to do with the Georgia High School Activity Association, nothing. They make no rules, they set no policy. The Georgia High School Activity Association functions as a separate private entity. So they don't live by the same rules that we live by here in Florida. And a lot of this comes from the legislature. That's where it started years ago. And it's, most of your legislators' kids go to private schools. And that's where it started. And now it's just gotten to where it's a much bigger issue than just private schools at this point. So, but I do think the rural school situation, the way they have it, as long as they don't let outside influences change it and then start raising the numbers, and, we've already got issues with Northview that won the state championship football this year, where they're in Pensacola, whatever county, Escambia County. Well, there's a ton more people in Escambia County there is in Washington County, but they're considered rural because of their population. So they're, but where do you draw the line? It ends up being, eventually you got to play the game, and so that's kind of where we are now.